Hello guys, how's it going? My name is Dalaran. Shadowlands have been with us for a couple of weeks now, and with the Mythic season approaching us very soon, the Mythic World First Race is going to be very fun to watch. The Mythic Plus gear as well as the keys are going to go up and up and up, reaching 15 but going way beyond that in the near future, and the PvP season is only just getting warmed up. So how has Shadowlands been doing so far? Some of you guys have asked me how Shadowlands been because you may have stayed away from the expansion because you got burned by Battle for Azeroth. You didn't really want to dive into or commit money into an expansion that you thought was maybe not worth. So in this video, I'm here to tell you my experience with Shadowlands so far, but I'll be honest, it has been honestly pretty good. Now, I will mention this before we really dive into some of my points. We did just come out of a pretty bad expansion, Battle for Azeroth. I still think Battle for Azeroth was better than Warlords of Draenor in most areas, but it was not the standard that we all want to see from Blizzard. And with Shadowlands being out, it's been quite an enjoyable ride. Everything has been not only new, but also exciting, and there have been a lot of new cool things added to the game. From the class changes, big and small, to some of the different content we get to interact with, to the way the gear works and the conduit system, soulbind system, the legendary system. There's a lot for us to really dive into. So let's start going through the points first, things that I like about this expansion and things that I didn't. And in reality, there's a lot of things that I like. The first thing that you should always consider about expansion is replayability. Do you want to play alts? Is leveling alts fun? Is it different or any interesting? And Blizzard did a really good job with this one. They wanted to make sure that the alt leveling experience is different than leveling your main. Of course, you can't do the same thing you did on your main, do the main story, try out all the different Covenant abilities, and some people have even told me that leveling through story might actually be slightly faster if that's what you want to do. But if you're tired of all the RP dialogue and you've heard it before and you already know what Covenant you want to play, you can literally jump into the Covenant you want to play immediately and start doing world quests, collecting AP, doing side objectives, and doing quests that you've never even done before in your main. Like my main, and I think a lot of you guys on the same boat, probably have gone to max level as soon as possible, and you didn't really care about any of the side objectives or the stories they tell. But now is a perfect opportunity for you to slow down and play through the stories. There's definitely a lot of work has been put into side quests, and there are some cool, charming moments that you will not experience unless you're playing them all over again. And this is your perfect opportunity. But you don't even need to quest. You can just do dungeons, you can PvP. There's so many different ways for you to interact with the game when you're playing your alts. I feel like it just adds so much more replayability, and I think that's a really strong point of this expansion. Next, let's talk about chores, because Blizzard mentioned that this expansion is going to be alt friendly. So how bad are the chores? How many hours are you going to have to sink into them in order to get your characters up and running and get them as close to effective as your main would? Well, first of all, they said it's an alt-friendly expansion, but if you're going to play any of your characters like a second main, you are going to have to do a lot of weekly activities. So if you're someone who's trying to get two characters and keep them at the same power levels, you're definitely going to have to put in more time. But if you're trying to have some legitimate alts, that you want to log on and do a couple dungeons, maybe a raid, maybe go PvP in Battlegrounds or cap some conquest with a friend, you could totally have a bunch of alts. A lot of the weekly activities are not mandatory, and the ones that are, they have a catch up. So off the bat from day one, if you have any characters that have not caught up to your main or caught up to really everybody, from day one you have catch up mechanisms active to catch up with everybody else. So if you're someone who does dungeons or someone who does PvP or raids, killing bosses, slaying players in PvP like in arenas, or killing bosses in mythics can even get you renowned to help you catch up. There is AP in this game, but the AP grind, while it's very similar, it has nothing to do with player power. So grinding AP will get you cosmetics and upgrades for your Sanctum, which has nothing to do with your player doing more stuff. The only thing you really need for any kind of player progression is Renown, which again has a lot of catch-ups, and it's really easy to get your Renown up and running. So that's really about it. And because all those shackles of previous expansions of having to clear every single world quest on the map for all the AP to squeeze as much out of it as possible, since all that stuff is gone, you really don't need to do a lot of weekly mandatory stuff in order to play your alts and enjoy them, which is probably the best thing they could have done. Then we have dungeons, and I'm a huge fan of Mythic Pluses. I became a fan of them back in Legion because a buddy introduced me to it, and they've always been fun with friends. I'm not a huge fan of pugging them, but with friends, they're very enjoyable. And Outlaw Rogues have had a great season of most of Battle for Azeroth playing inside of M+, since we were basically a must-have on your team, especially during Season 2 when you had to have 2 Outlaw Rogues in order to time a lot of the higher end keys, because that was a little insane. With some of the other class changes, Mythic Pluses are looking very fresh. We only have 8 of them to start, but a lot of them are memorable. They're all really cool looking, and the boss mechanics are really awesome. I'm a huge fan. They're really fresh, and I think there's a lot of different types of play you can have in M+. Grinding in Mythic Pluses, especially with the new seasonal affix, is even better. I think a lot of people like the seasonal affix, mostly because, one, it kind of helps you get through hurdles. Right now we don't have a lot of gear this early in the expansion or this early in the seasonal stuff, so we're not really going to be able to kill every single boss in Trash Bag just with lust, so we'll need a little bit extra oomph. That's where the Prideful affix comes in, and I feel like it's a very fair affix. It's one of the better ones. It's very similar to like the Reaping of 2, Season 2 for BFA, except it's much harder and gives you a buff after you slay the enemy instead of slaying all the ghosties. And it's very similar to Season 4, where you can utilize it strategically in order to give yourself an advantage, with Season 4 allowing you to skip certain trash bags you just didn't want to do. So altogether, dungeons, very memorable and very good. I feel like they are very fresh, and a lot of them have a very similar vibe to Freehold. The good kind of vibe where you want to do this dungeon again and again, not the kind of vibe where you just don't ever want to be in there ever. The raid with the Nathrias and every other fight. First of all, the castle is awesome, visually pleasing. The boss mechanics I feel like are fair, but are very mechanical in nature. Not really a lot of just stand there and DPS the boss and then move slightly once in a while. A lot of them do have you get involved in things. And the Nathrias fight in particular, mwah, it's the cherry on top. It is so good. It reminds me of Black Hen a bit, with Warlords of Draenor, how you crash down to the lower floor and then it gets really crazy. I love how the sword Remornia just kind of goes slicing all over the room. It just looks amazing. It just gives you like a little bit of this anime feeling to it, like this crazy amount of things going on. And Blizzard really, I mean, with the Nathrias, if every other fight, every other boss in every other raid going forward can be on this kind of scale, then they'll really top it. But this is a really good raid. Very enjoyable. We just got AOTC, and I cannot wait to dive into some of the fights on Mythics. And then there's PvP, and not everyone is going to agree with me on this one, but I kind of like how fast-paced things are. I'm probably going to get hate for this, but I really do think it's much better than dampening. I always felt that the dampening gameplay and dampening fights are very boring. I didn't really like the idea of having to wait there for 10-20 minutes until there was enough healing reduction where you could score a kill, because we did no damage and healers just healed a ton. I mean, I understand why they did it prior, but I really do like this speed. Even if legendaries are a little broken and certain classes are overtuned or some classes are undertuned, I think with a little bit of time, Blizzard is going to find the right balancing and scaling for things. And that's another thing, scaling no longer being in the game. I'm a huge fan of that. Finally, I can take my character, get whatever gear I need in order to perform better in PvP, and use that gear in order to improve on my gameplay. It gives you so many goals to look forward to in PvP, and doing dungeons and raids to PvP, that's another thing. You need to do less of that. That's the bad thing about BFA, is you kind of had to do PvE to PvP. But now that they added a vendor, lots of people are all around the vendor, constantly buying stuff. There's people out there queuing skirmishes, BGs to get that honor, to upgrade their next piece, and it's just so fun and fresh and exciting. A huge fan of PvP so far. Another thing I like about this expansion is there's a lot of side activities. Like when it comes to doing your Covenant Sanctum and killing rares and looking for toys and maybe even pets and stuff, there's a lot of side things to do. And there's story. Every single Covenant is going to have a storyline, and following every single Covenant story has actually been really enjoyable. You can even do some of these specific Covenant things like parties with event tier, which is kind of silly, but it's enjoyable. Doing it once a week and, you know, trying to clean up the place and get refreshments for your guests and entertain and stuff is just, there's a lot more side activities with this expansion, which I'm a huge fan of. Things that are not necessarily needed for raids or dungeons, just for fun. And I think that that's what they really were able to pack a lot of into this expansion. It's just a ton of fun things to do, besides just the endless grind for that item level or some sort of an AP grind, because those things were definitely not fun. But that's gonna be my thoughts on Shadowlands so far. Cannot wait for the seasonal stuff in the weekly chest this morning. Thank you all so much for watching. Hope you guys enjoyed. I'll see all of you in the next one.